Hey everyone, in this video I wanna share 7 decent but forgotten RPGs. With this I mean to say that these games are okay. If you like the term, I will say small hidden gems. The thing is that sometimes mechanics, narrative elements or even concept may not be for everyone. There are a couple I really liked, but you will catch quite fast why they may not be liked by many. So with no particular order, let's begin. I wanna start with Brave Dungeon, The Meaning of Justice. This entry comes from the Dark Witch series, also kind of obscure games. I knew about a side-scroller and a card game, but I have only played the side-scrolling one. Well, the thing with Brave Dungeon is that there are 3 stories, where they have different gameplay. For example, Al will go through different dungeons, exploring plenty of areas and jumping into turn-based battles. Up here I will say all good. With Cleansea you have a similar idea, but with narrow corridors. The thing is that its gameplay changes to something like finding the right pattern between other arrangements. Okay, it's still decent, but the moment you start to play with Papelman, things may get quite slow and grindy. Here the main objective is that you need to build her city, but sometimes gathering all the required materials take a huge amount of time, and that is pretty much the main idea, because combats take a backseat for a while. However, you need to finish the 3 stories to unlock the last chapter, where you can add a 4th party member. Here's where some battles may get interesting once again, because of the potential combinations between characters. However, the thing is that there's a point where it may get slightly stagnant later. I won't deny that it was quite entertaining, but it's obvious that parts of its development feel rushed or unpolished. Mana Khemia, Alchemist of Alrevis. Now this is a good RPG that passed under the radar, as it was launched way later for the PS2, where its story can be a bit hollow at times, but quite entertaining, where we follow the main character Ben, who is invited to Alrevis Academy. On this academy he will start to know other characters, like Jess, Flay, Nikki, and so on. After some events the story will retake Bane, explaining who he is and things like that, as he has no past memories. While at first it can be a bit trivial, down the line it takes on a much more serious approach. Then again the story can be a bit hollow at times, but the other characters spice these interactions, as they are quite lively. Gameplay wise, this is a turn-based RPG, where at first it can feel a bit slow, as you will have to go through different classes or tutorials that explain different mechanics. Of course, as you advance on this game you will have the chance to choose particular classes. The deal with this is that you will get rated. Don't worry that much, they aren't that difficult, but I do recommend to get a decent grade, as you will have some extra free time, having the chance to take on other quests, and from those quests find useful recipes. And if you like the interactions you have seen, you can also take on character quests, which can be entertaining in their own way, and they will also affect the ending. Perhaps the most important part of the game is going to be synthesized, but this is kinda complex, so I will move on. However, think about this as something like an atelier game. Learning how to produce items on bulk is what's important, as you will need it later. Dungeons in this game are rather simple, going straight forward or having different routes, but don't worry about it, as the map will help you out. Once in combat you can select up to 6 characters, but 3 of them will be on the field. However, as time passes, you can change between them or use them as offensive or defensive support. Where it starts to become important is against bosses, as they may be punishing if you try to push forward without some useful characters for that particular fight. The usual encounters can get tough down the line, and the post content can be a bit intimidating. Its turn-based system gets quite entertaining, but you will have to create a lot of items, so that is where people may differ about this game, as you have to gather good amounts of them. In the next entry, I wanna talk about Etc. Okay, the main reason why this game is quite unknown is because it never left Japan, but don't worry, you can find the ROMs or CIAs with English patch. In any case, here we follow Ryoma, character who woke up in the middle of a forest with amnesia and a sword. Moments later, Celine finds Ryoma and tells him to fight. Little after the confrontation, she is surprised that Ryoma was able to absorb the Eats, so Ryoma is told that he's in Amasia, but he didn't come alone, so they set to find that another person, who happens to be a classmate, Mizuki. And yeah, this is the cheesy part because Similarly as in Kirby games, this dude doesn't forgive anything. Well, the thing is that he awakens special powers by kissing. Now, leaving some of those moments aside, it is an enjoyable story. Sometimes dragging a bit the narrative, but enjoyable nonetheless. The cool thing is that etc. is quite short, taking like 17 hours, so it gets a pass from my side. Now, this is a game where, as I mentioned, kissing gives special powers, so most of the times you have to jump into that silly game almost right away, otherwise you won't be able to use those moves until way later. The thing is that some bosses will spam attacks that can beat all your female characters, so yeah, you know where this is going. Don't worry, in the options you can disable the minigame. You don't get optimal results, but considering the length of the game, it isn't that big of a deal. What's interesting about this entry is the level of customization given to you, because at first it may feel like bosses beat the heck out of you with this, but as you find more characters, runes, and you get the mechanics, you can play in different ways, depending which character you use, their bond, and assigned runes. Let's continue with Baroque. This game was originally launched for the Sega Saturn in 1998, and then ported to different consoles, in some having reworked the dungeons, adding music and other details. Particularly the version I enjoy the most is the original, as it has much more personality and way better ambience. This is a first-person dungeon crawler with roguelike elements, and while it was launched some decades ago, I definitely recommend it. But let's be honest, the deal with this game is more about its gameplay, because the moment you die, levels, equipment, everything you had is gone, and it can be quite punishing. Regarding the story elements, I have no issues. On the other hand, I will say it is amazing with capital A. It may be confusing, but once you have looped the story sometimes, check on lore, dialogues, and other environmental storytelling, everything starts to make sense. However, the part that made grind gears is that to get the true ending, the game is stupidly cryptic, where you will have to dive like mad on many conversations. Now let's say that you did all of that. Jumping into the dungeon can be a whole crusade, because if RNGesus is against you, you may miss even the most basic of weapons, having to punch everything. What's cool is that this game has so many little mechanics that once you get what to throw, which enemies avoid, and things like that, the experience is much smoother. In my eyes, you know I like it, but yeah, I get why a lot of people may skip it without thinking twice. In the next entry, Son of the Enders, The Feast of Mars. If you know about Son of the Enders games, don't worry having to play the other titles. This game is its own thing. It is supposed to take place between both entries, but it doesn't really matter. However, there are some references here and there. In this tale, we are going to follow Cage, boy who works in a ship named Bonaparte 3, along his friend Ares. In one expedition, he notices a girl going into the cargo holds and follows her, but while doing that, they get attacked by a black orbital frame. So without thinking too much and after a fast conversation, Cage and Mion escape using a lev. But once the black frame destroys the Bonaparte 3, they confront our duo, which doesn't go that well, so they descend on Mars. And once there, they are apprehended by the UNSF security, as they fail to prove innocence about the Bonaparte incident. And from here, they are saved by Dixon, leader from the Anti-Terrestrial League. And that's how Cage gets caught up in a conflict between Earth and Mars. This is a story where you are going to read a lot. At some degree, it's important to set the stage, but beware that some scenes may take up to 20-30 minutes. And in overall, it is going to depend if you don't mind some classic tropes, left and right. What's appealing about this strategic RPG is that in each combat you have to move something like a reticle while attacking the enemy. If you are able to attack right on top of them, you get critical hits. If it is quite close, a normal hit. And of course, if you run out of time or weren't able to get the target, the enemy will avoid the attack. Aside from that, it is a quite standard strategic game. I will say tending on the easy territory. Of course, if you were able to get the whole idea about attacking and avoiding. But considering the year in which it was launched and that few games use this mechanic, yeah, it's worth the time. Let's follow with Lord of Arcana. I won't jump that much in its story because it is quite simple in nature. There is a powerful stone, Arcana, monsters, and slayers who seek Arcana. Simple as that. And of course, due to that simplicity, it is a game that is compared primarily with Monster Hunter and Tales games. And yeah, it is quite similar on multiple ways, as you can create your character, choose a particular playstyle depending from the weapon, armor, monsters to summon, and magics. Those are the basics of the game. Now jumping into the dungeons, I will say that it is straightforward in nature, kind of narrow corridors where you can find different enemies, and once you initiate a combat, you are going to be sent into something like a small arena. In these places, you will have to defeat every enemy to keep moving forward on the dungeon. Oftentimes, they aren't that complicated, everything is going to depend from your playstyle. The main reason why it is compared with Monster Hunter is because once you get into the town, you can craft weapons, accept quests and things like that with similar mechanics. And this quest can take a while as old Monster Hunter entries, sometimes 15 or 40 minutes, more or less. And similarly, at the end of each quest, you get materials and evaluation criteria. So, it is a good option if you want to kill some time without thinking too much. And last but not least, Magical Star Sign. This is a story where we are going to follow a hero along other companions in the Baklava solar system. This is an entertaining story, nothing that serious, where teacher Madeline is sent to Pufun to fight pirates and wizards. But before that, she trains the students to defend themselves. The next day, she departs, and time starts to pass. And well, she doesn't come back, so you can predict where this story starts to point to. Gameplay wise, the very first thing you do is choose between light or darkness, each having advantages and disadvantages. Don't worry too much about it, just consider how you want to proceed in this adventure. This is a turn-based RPG where you can actively play if you desire it, as you can tap your character while doing some actions to deal more damage, or if you are going to get hit, you have some frames where you can also touch the character and the guard attacks. If there are AoE moves, you can guard multiple characters, but yeah, it is quite complicated. However, you can do it. Down the line you will also play with a mechanic known as Celestial Swap. The deal is that it changes the planet rotation. It is important if you want to be powered up on certain battles. It will also depend from your party, but it takes some time to fully understand the system, as later you will have to take into consideration other things like orbits, buffs, debuffs, affinity, and if you use the front or back rows. As for the elements, don't worry, they are your classic rock, paper, scissors, and as you advance on different planets, you will add new party members. It is an RPG where sometimes it can be tough, as you may lack on cures or other things while proceeding, so always keep in mind that your items are quite important. With this, I hope you found this video informative. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.